Emily Jashinsky, culture editor at The Federalist, with us now. Why is Thiel so powerful, and what does he want out of all of this?
Yeah, Thiel is powerful, because he's a billionaire with tons of money and a huge willingness to wield that financial power in different sectors, not even just electoral politics. We've seen him funding things like heterodox film festivals, the National Conservatism Conference, et cetera, et cetera. But he's really seen in the sort of Trump wing of the Republican Party as the guy who can take these ideas and translate them into political power by backing people like J.D. Vance and Blake Masters, who sort of share that post-Trump worldview of populist conservatism and can defeat the establishment conservatism espoused and then pushed by people like Mitch McConnell and his acolytes here in D.C., who hold a lot of the purse strings still. So that's why Thiel is now emerging as such a central figure in Republican politics.
You take Ohio as this microcosm. J.D. Vance, who wrote the Hillbilly Elegy book and to be seen, sort of came on the stage as this uber celebrity. He's largely fizzled as a candidate. If the Trump-Thiel-backed candidate loses in Ohio, of all places, does that flip the paradigm you just laid out on its head?
So it's interesting. It'll be when we have results from Ohio and Arizona, both of which, in both of which the Thiel-backed candidate could easily lose. So that's a big deal. Blake Masters down in Arizona was basically Peter Thiel's chief of staff at his foundation for a really long time. They're close. Thiel has been in close contact with all of these people. They're figureheads of the sort of national conservatism, populist conservatism movement. And Vance is an odd case study because he has all of the sort of Trump baggage and he has the Hillbilly Elegy baggage, and it's kind of odd to see him as a microcosm because he's running against somebody who's calling him basically a carpetbagger and all of these different things. So
they had a fist fight during one of the debates, so that or almost a fist fight. It's not, no one has really purported themselves that well in Ohio. How does Glenn Youngkin play into this? Governor of Virginia, won in a Biden +10 state. And just now, past couple of hours, he has filed paperwork to start getting involved in national races in 2022, both House, Senate races, but also governor's races. How is Glenn Youngkin playing between Thiel and Trump?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the answer to your last question about what it means if the Thiel-backed candidate in Ohio, of all places, goes down. You know, what does that look like? And I think Youngkin is the example of how even if Thiel loses with Masters and Vance, there is this element of the Republican Party embracing the culture war in this post-Trump era that would live on because Glenn Youngkin's example was like that beacon to both the GOP and to the more Trump wing of the party that, hey, we should be leaning into this fight in education. We should be leaning into this fight when it comes to sex and gender and sports and all of those different things. Youngkin's victory really signaled that, and his sort of ascendancy filing this paperwork, as you note, he's like
how do we
private equity guy.
Yeah, how do we look at this though, right? Because you've got Youngkin, who is MAGA without the crazy, effectively.
Yep.
Then you've got Blake Masters, J.D. Vance, Trump as candidates who are sort of competing for just how crazy they can be on top of being MAGA. Just look at one of the ads that Trump asked to be taken down.
J.D. Vance, in his own words.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. As somebody who doesn't like Trump, I might have to hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. I didn't vote for Trump because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious, him being really outrageous and offensive.
All right, so that's the Club for Growth, which is now sort of at war with Trump because they don't like Vance. Glenn Youngkin is the person who would never even say Donald Trump's name on the campaign trail ever.
Exactly. And granted, these are very different places, Virginia and Ohio. Virginia, like you mentioned, voted for Biden by a pretty healthy margin. And that's why, again, I think if Vance goes down, he has this like very particular baggage that came with Hillbilly Elegy being released around the time that Trump emerged on the stage. And he has all of these quotes. People like Masters and Youngkin can more effectively sort of get around that Trump question, and they don't have to deal with that baggage. And so I think, Vance goes down, this still lives on. And Youngkin is probably the best example of why that's possible, because he's somebody who brought together the establishment wing and the sort of Trump wing in a consensus that this was the right campaign to run in that state.
Last question, I got about 20 seconds. Is there any money or donors who are looking for that combination, or is it totally split, the McConnell wing, Club for Growth wing, and on the other side, the Thiel Trump wing?
Yeah, I think actually just for the pure sake of political expediency, everybody wants to find that Youngkin, the person who can have that sweet spot. There's a lot of money in the Thiel camp. There's no question about it. There's a lot of people who are still loyal to Mitch McConnell, but people are increasingly aware that they need to be able to walk that line. And so I think a lot of it's going to go to the Youngkins in the future.
And he is actually now starting to dole some of the money out. Hey, Emily, it was good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great analysis. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.